Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to be sitting down now with Josh Allen, aka Devolore. He works on the communications team at Blizzard, which means you've probably seen his tweets. You probably remember him from Tankspot all the way back in the day. He was a content creator. He was working at Blizzard for 9 years. He recently left. He got a big promotion working over at TikTok, and we're going to sit down and talk to him. He had lots of close ties with the development team, so you're going to find out a lot about how World of Warcraft is made from announcement until it comes out. All right? So I hope you enjoy this interview. But you've moved on now. How's life?
No, it's good. It's good. I work for an app now. Got in the tech industry. That's fun.
It is though, because you've moved up in the world, right?
Yeah, a bit, I guess. I have a team. Like we're focused on building out creators on TikTok and specifically for live stuff and doing lots of cool almost like building what gaming could be like live on TikTok, which is really, really cool because it reminds me a lot of, I was saying this earlier, it reminds me a lot of just how gaming streaming was back in the early days.
Where do you see it going next? Because you've been a content creator yourself, right? Everybody remembers you from Tankspot, and I mean, that's where I knew you. And you had I'm so jealous of your background. It was really fucking good for that era as well. Did you make that yourself? Because you had all the screens and it was a proper.
Oh, like my backdrop.
Yeah.
And
everything. It was so much better than what we all did.
I just put that together with stuff that I had around,
See, that fucks me off. It really fucks me off because it looked so good. It was way better than it deserved to be for that era of making content.
Well, and the funny part. So the funny thing about all of that is that it came together because I basically was filming out of a basement at the time, and it was my uncle's house, and he'd just been using it all for storage. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna make a little studio over here. But there was just stuff everywhere, and I was like, I don't feel like moving all of this. Here's a black sheet. I'm gonna staple this to the wall and put it over top of that.
The reality is always so much worse. We just built a fireplace set because I love doing these sit-down chats with people. So we were like, how's best to do this? I would love it to be an old English fireplace where it looks like we got a rum or a brandy or a cup of coffee, and we sat by the fireplace and we had a nice drink before nighttime. But we had a joiner come in and build the damn thing. Cost me a ton of money. And then ultimately he's like, if you wanted to look like a brick chimney, we're just going to nail plastic brick fascia to the thing. Yeah. And we're just going to hammer it in, and we turn the cameras on and all the nails are reflective. So we had to go over the Sharpie, color them all in to hide them. And everyone's seen it now because we did a video on it, and they're like, that's beautiful. I'm like, if you only knew. If you only knew how scuffed and messed up this thing is.
That's very funny.
It is.
It's very funny.
It was weird for you to go out the content creation thing then, because you joined Blizzard. How long were you there?
So I was at Blizzard for 9 years. Joined as a community manager. They basically, it turns out they were looking for, not me directly, but they were like, we should get someone like him to come work in community management. And then I applied, and they were like, well, shit, I guess that works.
There's a lot of community managers. I met loads this week. And a lot of them are ex-content creators.
Yeah.
What's the appeal of that? Is it just because you kind of already know people in the community, or you just kind of know how to deal with egos because you've been in that environment?
It's a little bit of both, and it depends on the style of community management too. Because a lot of time, the concept of community management has changed so much over the past decade. When I started at Blizzard, it was very much that let's get someone from the community to come in here because they understand the community. And content creation versus community building were not as separated back then as they are now. They're still very much in the same field, but they weren't. The concept of full-time streamers wasn't as massive back then as it is today. Full-time streamers, content creators, etc. Which is part of why I got the job, or took the job, I should say. But a lot of it is just it'll be a company that's we know that community is important. We know that community building is important. No one who's currently here knows how to work in that, and who would be better for this job than someone who's already been out there working in the community, building their own communities as part of our branding and so on. So that's how that all came around. Nowadays, it's gotten, in a lot of ways, a lot more it's grown up a lot, I guess is how I would put it, where starting to actually think about things like ROI and like what is actually the investment that we're getting back from this, which is something that in the early days everyone was really like, no, you can't think about what you're getting back when you're just like our whole purpose is to give back to the community because we know having a community is important.
So they really never considered it as an investment, a marketing opportunity at that point. They just wanted to have that connection.
It was one of those like, this happens a lot in large corporations I've discovered. It's sort of the case where there's this understanding that it's important, but not really understood how to measure it or how to put it into proper terms. So then everybody just kind of goes, well, community is so important to us. It's important that, like Blizzard, for example, was like, it's so important that Blizzard has a vibrant community that really loves and cares for its games because we know then they'll continue to buy and play our games if they're invested in the community. But there wasn't really that sense of how to tie all those dots together. Whereas nowadays, there's been a lot more like research done just generally in the field. There's a lot more ways to like, through things like, I don't know, like creator codes or so on. Like there's lots of more ways to be able to tell like, yes, we did this thing and this was the result of it. There's been a lot more proven cases of someone did this thing and this was the result they got, so we should do that thing because we think we'll get similar results and so on. It's just more mature as an industry these days, which does mean it gets a lot more specialized into things like there's the like forum posting side of community management. There's the influencer and content creator side of community management. There's the concept of like just throwing ideas out there as communications that's done in a way that's intended for community building, and so on, like working with developers so that they have like interviews and stuff and so on. So yeah, that was a rambly answer, but
no,
community, it's a complicated thing.
It is a complicated thing, and a lot of people don't know. I mean, I've told some people, and I've talked about it on stream and stuff, but like the fact that we got to go to Blizzard this week is the initial string that starts it off is you. Like you took some risks, and you took a risk on me once. Like you snuck me into an interview where I'd been told by the PR people at Blizzard like I was never going to be in that room, and I didn't know why. I hadn't done anything in particular, and it was you who did that. So I actually got some face-to-face time with Ian all those years back, and changed his mind of what I. Well, actually, it turned out he was fine, and he always is. Like that was what I found surprising, and he pulled me aside afterwards. He's like, just so you know, it's not me who stopped you seeing me. It's somebody else who's trying to protect me from you. And I'm like, am I the fucking boogeyman? Am I Thanos or some shit? What are you talking about? He's like, I don't really know why.
Yeah.
But it was you who did that for me.
Yeah, I mean, those were complicated. It's always complicated times. And there's always that, like, it can be hard to take feedback and accept feedback and look at feedback and go, this person doesn't hate me, the creator of this thing. They just really don't like what I created. And that's every industry. Like a chef who makes a really awesome cake and they're like, man, I really made this awesome cake. I think this is great. And then they give it to somebody and they're like, wow, this cake is shit. They're going to feel like that's an affront on them as a person. So that does happen a lot inside the gaming industry. Obviously, there are also people who then step way over the line and get into like actually harassing developers directly, which is a different thing. And that's a different line that gets crossed. But even in the cases where it's like, no, this is just valid criticism of the product, it can be difficult to step back from that and go, okay, they just didn't like the thing. They're not calling me names. They're just not liking the thing that I made. And I think that ends up like a lot of people who are not like basically aren't community managers, aren't accustomed to that, are exposed to a lot more of that than honestly they probably should be. Just because of how widespread like content creation has gotten these days. And obviously like I'm always going to be in favor of the continued growth of the content creation industry and continued growth of content creators and so on. That's literally my team's job at TikTok now, is to help grow content creators. But it can be difficult for someone who is not accustomed to that industry, not in tune with that industry, not really the sort of person who gathers and takes and sees all this feedback on a daily basis, because they're not seeing the trends then, right? Like they're not seeing, yeah, they're really upset about this thing, but this other thing that they actually liked, they said similar things about, because that's just their personality. Yeah. They're just a harsh person, and that's how they talk. Or they're not seeing like, here's the 50 ways in which this person really loved this game, and then they were really upset by this, and the reason they were so harsh is because they loved everything else so much, they wished this thing was
Well, that's one thing we
like
learned
that.
from the current community manager team is like, I was like, what is your day-to-day job then? And they were like, well, we get like the patch notes and we sift through those for things that are relevant because a lot of them are like bullshit data side things that nobody cares about. And then we put them out to the public. But another part of it is we basically read forums a lot and we gather all that feedback and then we present that to the relevant people to say, this is the kind of community feel right now. But it's not really even, they're not even very protective about it in most ways. It's like, but there's some information that's useless. Like, I hate, I don't know, Ian's shoes, you know, and why does he wear those fucking shoes or whatever? I just made that up. Nobody hates Ian's shoes, but like that's not useful information, dude. Like, that, what do you expect us to do about that? Like, that's not going to happen. And did you feel like you had to filter that for like what's relevant, what's not?
Yeah, I mean, there was a significant portion of my time at Blizzard where developer communications was my job. And then my job got reconfigured into being more influencer focused, and everyone was like, why does Lore hate us now? He doesn't talk on the forums anymore. I'm like, well, yes, that's because it's not my job anymore. I'm no longer doing that specific task. There are other people doing that task. Go listen to them. Yeah, there was a lot of that general job and position is not even so much filtering as, I guess, distilling is how I would put it.
Make sure it goes to the right place.
Yeah, make sure it goes to the right place. Make sure that, because a lot of times people will say one thing and what they actually mean is kind of something else. Like, they still mean what they say, obviously, but if it's like, wow, I really hate, like Torghast was a great example where people were like, they really, really loved Torghast in early beta.
Same.
And then when it came out, they were like, wow, I hate Torghast so much. And the takeaway from that was, okay, what changed? And what changed was rewards were added to it. And so then it became a
both,
task.
right? They took rewards out because they had gear and stuff in it originally. It was, it got silly. They took all that out and then they just made you do it for legendaries, which was a complete like 180 on what it originally was.
That's what I mean, though. Is like, it's the sort of thing where if Torghast had just remained as like a fun thing that you could go do when you felt like it, I think a lot of people would have enjoyed it because they didn't feel obligated to do it. Mm-hmm. But as soon as you add that obligation, that was the point where it became a chore for people, and it became Torghast at that point. And so that was the sort of thing that like we would look at that sort of feedback and we'd be like, okay, yes, everyone's saying they don't like Torghast, but the majority of the reason we can tell from reading all these different things, and like obviously there's a variety of opinions as well, so it's always a matter of like what are the biggest pain points to be discovered, because like occasionally there were some people just like, I don't like the way the Ghost Boys look. I'm like, okay, well that's valid opinion. You're allowed to not like the Ghosty Boys, but that's not what I'm going to take to the development team as like a priority issue that needs fixing.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean by like sometimes people are saying, they just say they hate something, and you have to spend some time figuring out, okay, why do they hate this?
Yeah.
What about it is
I mean,
the
it's no
actual
different
problem?
than YouTube comments. It's like, I fucking hate the sound of his voice. Okay, do you hate my accent? Do you hate the microphone I'm using?
Yeah.
Am I too loud? Am I not normalized properly? Like, trying to figure it out, or is it just, you know, you just hate the sound of
It's
my voice?
actually your face. So.
Yeah, which is odd because they specifically said my voice. But now I see in the mirror, it's probably that. But most of the feedback does get back to the guys, to the developers, which obviously one of the biggest complaints in the WoW community is like, they're not listening to us. You know, I've been bitching about this nobody knows better than me is how much I bitched about some of the things in Shadowlands. But they do generally get most of the stuff there, which is surprising when you find out. It's like, yeah, they do. They kind of do.
Yeah, if people are, especially once a point becomes like, well, everyone knows that no one likes this thing. It's like, well, yes, everyone also includes the development team by this point. You can be fairly confident in that. And a lot of times, then the job actually, it gets interesting because a lot of times then the job becomes, okay, what are the other things? Because everyone's talking about this one thing that's really upsetting everyone right now. I don't need to tell the development team for the 30th time that people want to be able to switch between covenants. Like, they know that. I don't need to tell them that again. So what are the other topics that are going on in the community that they're not aware of because everyone's so busy focused talking about this thing? And so making sure that those other bits of feedback and those other smaller conversations still make it to the development team. And that's not like trying to like distract them from the more important conversation or anything. It's just that work doesn't need to be done because
What's it like
everywhere.
when you've got to announce something you know the community's not going to like? Because you must be in that position sometimes, because you put out a lot of the posts and stuff like that. So I mean, as
I
a
used
former
to, yeah.
player and as a content creator and a critique as well, like you used to do critique and things. So you're aware of like a finger on the pulse, so to speak. It's like, you know that when we announce this, and then you kind of have to deal with it. Right? You're the guy who has to do it. What's that like? I don't need any specifics, examples.
No,
right?
sure.
I'm just curious, like,
Yeah.
you there are definitely times you're about to post something and you know this is just going to cause a shitstorm.
Yeah, and like I do have to be careful about specifics because like I don't work at Blizzard anymore.
No.
I don't speak on.
And to be
behalf of
clear,
them or
we
anything.
can cut anything out you don't want in there.
No, that's all good.
That's totally fine.
I've done the talking thing for long enough that I'm usually pretty good at self-filtering in that way.
Sure.
But yeah, like, so a lot of time there's been cases in the past where it's like, okay, we like the team would learn about what the features were in the upcoming expansion, and I would be like, okay, that feature is the one everyone's going to hate. Like, I can tell already what's going on here is people are going to be very upset about this.
So like me with Covenants. I mean, I knew in 2 minutes it was like, this is a bad idea.
Yeah. Covenants was a weird one just because I did not fully understand what it was for a while. Because like, imagine Covenants ended up being a pretty convoluted, especially with like you add in soulbinds and everything as well, ended up being a pretty complicated and convoluted system. Imagine if none of that work had been done yet and someone was just trying to vaguely describe what it was going to be to you. That was the state that I was receiving this information in. So I was like, I don't understand it yet.
At BlizzCon,
I don't know what
right?
it is.
They were announced, and we were like, we all fill in the gaps ourselves.
Yeah.
Right, that's what happens. And I came up with a really thorough RPG storytelling thing and all this, and like, I was like, these are going to be awesome.
That's one of my favorite like pitfalls that I try to warn people about with like every job that I've had and every announcement that I've been a part of is like, please be sure you're ready to talk about something in a complete sense before you start talking about it. Because if you just throw out like a vague idea of like, here's what this is going to be, we have this idea to build something that's kind of like this, they will fill in the blanks.
Yep.
And they will either, if they're feeling negative, they will fill in the blanks with all negative things about how this is going to be the worst thing that they've ever experienced, and thus they will hate your thing before you've even made it, or they will build it up to be this amazing, like huge, groundbreaking thing like Island Expeditions. This happened with Island Expeditions in BFA, where everyone was like, oh my god, we're going to go to all these islands, and it's going to be like this really cool, like, PvE, but kind of PvP-ish sort of thing, and that's going to be great, and we're unearthing these artifacts, and we're finding all this cool stuff. And then we're like, wait, this is just a thing that you queue for that's like...
That gives you artifact power really quick.
It's just scenarios again? Like,
yeah, kind of. They sold that as... I think Garrisons is probably the worst situation ever, because Garrisons, they were like, you're going to get to build it, and immediately the impression you get is, I'm going to get to customize this shit. I'm going to, like, as an old school classic raider, I'm going to have like Onyxia and Nefarian's heads like facing each other, and then I'm going to be able to have the tail around the building, you know, I'm going to customize it. And then when we got it, it was like, well, somebody has a stables here and someone has a stables here. And that's kind of the limit of your customization that you're going to get.
Yeah, that's also why I think it's important to like have started building something before you start talking about it too much. Like, Blizzard gets really, really cool ideas for stuff, and then they'll start building it and they'll be like, okay, we can't actually make it the way that we wanted to because the thing we were trying to do isn't working. So we have to do something else now. And so they'll often, if you talk to somebody about a product early enough, like there's been things many times over the years that like, oh man, this upcoming system sounds like it's going to be really, really cool. And then later it's Azerite armor. And you're like, oh, never mind. But that's just because the initial idea was amazing and sounded super promising and sounded super cool. But then as it started getting built, it was like, okay, we don't have time to do all of this stuff that we wanted to do, and we don't, like, this other idea doesn't work, and also this other thing was developed that now takes the place of this other thing that we were going to do. So just the nature of software and game development, especially at on a team the size of the World of Warcraft team, means that until you've built most of it, you kind of don't know what it is yet.
Yeah.
So it can be difficult to...
And people can start messing with it and like fidgeting with it.
Yeah, exactly. The other unfortunate thing that Blizzard specifically has to contend with a lot in the MMO space is data mining. Like, just the nature of how the development cycle works. Everything goes to a PTR.
I got a feeling more than ever, not to interrupt, but they really don't like it. But they're not quite sure what to do about it yet.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like, there's a clear, demonstrable advantage to the resources that become available to players, sites like Wowhead and so on, that become available to players that would not exist if it wasn't for data mining. So it's like, okay, obviously, like Blizzard as a company should not shut down. I'm now speaking purely from my own opinion. Blizzard as a company should not shut down data mining because that would be catastrophic for things like Wowhead and so on. And Wowhead and other sites, several other, I'm not going to list every single site that exists, but these sites are very, very valuable and important for the success of the game and for the success of the community. But at the same time, when it's like, okay, we have a new story beat coming up, and we know everyone is going to see the final cinematic at the end of the story beat because it'll have been posted on YouTube and everywhere before they have seen any of the breadcrumbs that lead up to that moment or experienced any of the content that leads up to that moment. How do you tell an interesting story in that way? And like they've done some things over the years. They've made it harder to get like cinematics and stuff like posted, but it still leads to like the player experience oftentimes being like, yeah, my guild took 3 months to kill the jailer, but I saw the end cinematic the first day.
Yeah,
so
not the Argus one, right? They just stuck it in the middle of Dalaran, do you remember?
Yeah.
So it's like you can just go, if once somebody's killed it, you can just go and click on the thing and watch it.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's rough from a storytelling perspective.
And secret hiding as well. Like I got the impression in a lot of conversations because I was exactly having this conversation. Whereas like the data mining is like. There's pros and cons, like you said. Like there's pros, we find out about stuff early. You know, we can start getting early feedback. It's really good. The cons is we can't really do any surprises, but we're working on like the tech you said, so we can with certain things. Because it would be nice to do. We look at games like Fortnite, where like a meteor appears in the sky and things are coming. FF14's done something similar, where a new star appears in one of the zones. It's like that star wasn't there yesterday. What the fuck's going on? But they have data mining. Like it exists if you're in those discords, but if it goes public, like people are in big trouble and they'll hunt you down. But Blizzard doesn't seem to want to go that far, but just find better ways of encrypting the things they don't want you to know about.
Yeah. Well, and also like the sort of, I don't think Blizzard could really crack down on data mining too much, just because like someone's going to do it, and the result then is either like. They could shut down Wowhead's data mining, but Wowhead is a site that wants to play nice with Blizzard, wants to work with Blizzard, wants to do things in a way that's beneficial towards the game because like they have a clear invested like interest in the game continuing to be successful. Because if WoW goes away, so does Wowhead. Turns out. So why would Blizzard crack down on Wowhead, knowing that somebody else is going to do the same thing?
Yeah.
And then they'll have to go and crack down on them too.
They're not the only ones
crack down on them too. Yeah, exactly. When they like that, just makes the situation worse for Blizzard in that situation. So, yeah.
No, I think you're totally right, and I think they the impression I got is they want to do a lot more secret stuff without getting screwed over entirely.
And they've been able to do a lot more stuff through like hot fixes and such too in recent years, which hot fixes are very difficult to data mine because they don't like nothing actually appears in any data anywhere until it gets pushed out to players.
Yeah, it's kind of what spoiled the Jailer's secret phase was the hotfix. It's like, we're changing a spell that nobody has seen yet. It's like,
Yeah.
Very sussy. It was like, did you see that was the message I got like at 7 a.m. It's like, did anybody see they changed the spell we haven't seen yet? There's a secret phase coming, guys. Everybody strap in and get ready. I had to keep that secret on the cast as well. I was like, I wonder if there's a secret phase, and we all knew there was absolutely there's a secret phase coming. It was fucking crazy. But you've left Blizzard now, and obviously I've just been on campus, and a big part of why we went and why I paid for it and stuff is like, look, we're going to ask you about the harassment stuff and the internal culture, what's changed and stuff. But you lived through it. Like, what was that like when it all started to happen?
Yeah, so I mean, like, I was around, obviously, when all these allegations were coming out and everything. I was still at the company. I didn't experience much of it myself because, like, I'm a dude. I'm a white dude, so I was not the target of most of this harassment. But I know, like, a lot of the like colleagues and everybody that there were a lot of women that I worked very closely with that they were like, yeah, this is all true, and I was like, oh shit,
yeah,
like this is awful. Man, it was a rough time.
Because you're working from home then, I think, right?
We were working from home by then as well, too. And I honestly think, like, the fact that we were working from home was a pretty big, a pretty important part of what made so many people feel more comfortable to come forward with these stories. Because when you're around somebody every single day...
Yeah, running into the corridor and things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I can totally understand why someone who has had a really, really awful experience with someone or been harassed by someone would want to keep that quiet in that situation because, like, yeah, they're an awful person and they need to, like, atone for their sins, essentially. They need to be, like, something should happen as a result of this. But you don't want that to then make things worse for yourself in the process. Like, it's tough coming forward as a victim like that. So as we were all working from home, I do think that was a big part of what sort of gave people the courage to speak up. And man, there was so much, like, it's common for there to be at least a couple people around that you're like, they need to chill out a little bit. And like, you'll see something weird and you're like, hey, by the way, HR, this happened. Like, I don't necessarily want them fired, but like someone should talk to them about this because this was not okay. And so like I had seen and reported a few things myself over the years, but like the sheer number of cases that came out at that point, I was like, oh my God.
It was relentless. The whole thing. It was like insane. Just every day we were reading something new. And even last month there was more. From that weird, it was like all in a very condensed time period. Like a really bad time period that seemed to happen and shook up the whole company. Like the changes they must have had to put, I don't know what their internal communication was like. I know you were probably under NDA for stuff like that, but they were scrambling to sort stuff out. But did they silence you at all? Because you were very vocal on Twitter.
No. To Blizzard's credit, I made a whole ton of like very I made it very clear I wanted Bobby Kotick fired. I made a meme about it and people were like, oh my God, you're gonna get in so much trouble. And like my response, this was the one thing that did get mentioned to me at some point, is I responded to that by saying, if you think this is harsh, you should see what I'm saying in our company Slack channels. And they were like, probably don't talk about internal company Slack channels on your Twitter. So, oops, I guess. But it was fine anyway.
Not that you linked a picture of it or anything like that.
Well, and because the biggest thing was like, there were obviously some very influential and very awful people at Blizzard, and this was like the whole thing around all of it. But the majority of the people at the company had the same reaction that I did, which was, oh my God, I had no idea how bad it was. Like I said, you see things from time to time and you go, that's not good.
But it also wasn't something super egregious, just like, that's creeping me out. Like,
no. Yeah. It would just be more like, I was at a company party and this guy seemed to be kind of hanging around this one girl a bunch and she didn't seem into it. So I'd be like, that's an awkward situation. And that's something that I will like mention to someone later, but I'm not gonna like run over and be like, excuse me, sir, you need to leave this, because it's like not responsibility, but it's her choice whether or not she wants anything done about it in that situation. I'm not going to push an issue in a case like that. But like, as all the stories started coming out, it was like, oh my God, I had no idea it was this bad. And I had no idea all of this was happening.
Was everyone pretty supportive of each other then? Because obviously it was a super, we always have to come back because one of the reasons we came here is, if I literally changed my game while streaming to World of Warcraft, there'd be comments like, I'm not sticking around for sexual harassment game. And that company has 7,000 employees. It's like, I wanted to know what was done about these few people, right? Because I assume amongst most people, it was you're all really supportive of each other, because you clearly were.
Yeah.
Which is why we're sat here today. It's like, you were very vocal, like, fuck this. Like, it needs sorting now.
Well, and that was one of the biggest things that honestly made me stay at the company through it. Like, I think pretty much everyone, when the news first broke, like, we were all looking on job sites. We were all like, man, I don't know if I can even justify being a part of this company anymore, because I've learned of all this
shit, dude.
All this stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry for everybody who went through that.
But what happened was, so many of us saw everyone else at the company standing up and being like, this is like, especially at the like just base employee level, standing up and being like, our leadership has failed us. We have each other though. Let's work together. Let's make this be a better place. And if leadership isn't going to do that for us, then they need to get out of the way. And that's when all the talk of like unionizing started to come together, and trying to have like collective action and collective bargaining and all of that. And that was the point where I was like, okay, no, I'm going to stay here, because even though a fraction of the people here are completely awful or were completely awful, that everyone that I know of that was a complete piece of trash at Blizzard is gone now.
I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Like, I'm not going to let those people ruin my game and my work and the company that I've invested so much of my own time into
That's badass.
because like some asshole men were asshole men. Like, yes, there's a agreed.
Jesse
Yes,
Cox interference.
this is actually true. Yes, no. Bobby Kotick is still at the company, and I do very much wish that to no longer be the case.
As do many millions of people around the
Yes.
world, I believe. Like,
Yes.
there's no love there. And it's
Yeah. I should also clarify, like, just for context of the discussions that I'm having, when I think of Blizzard, I think of, like, what is now Mike Ibarra and below. I very rarely worked with any of the other branches of Activision, so that's feels more like a parent company to me than the company Blizzard.
It was
So
something that
when
was
I'm
stressed
talking
at
about
us. Is
Blizzard,
like
that's what I'm talking
Activision.
about.
We don't even. It's strange. They're kind of just Activision Blizzard, but they're not here. Our link seems to be occasionally they push stuff to our launcher, and that's their limit. Because again, one of the things we wanted to clear up is the community perception is like ever since Activision got involved, they've probably been enforcing, monthly metrics and retention levels and things like that, but. It was made very, very clear to us that is not the case.
Yeah.
Activision were not involved in anything to do with Blizzard's IPs.
Yeah, no, there's always this, like, I love reading all the things on the internet of, like, oh, Bobby Kotick must have called up, like, I don't know, the Overwatch team and told them that they had to put a battle pass in. It's like, I would be surprised if Bobby Kotick knows what a battle pass is. Like, this is,
Sorry, my yachts. What?
like, this is a guy whose job is to sell Activision Blizzard stock to investors. He doesn't care what the video games are as long as the line's going up. So, but yeah, like, it's Blizzard has always been pretty siloed off from like Activision. So like people say, well, they did that in Call of Duty, so of course they're going to do it in World of Warcraft now. It's like that would usually be how we learned that something happened in Call of Duty.
Exactly. So overall, do you think you were happy with how Blizzard handled it internally, with getting rid of those people, support for the people who needed it and things?
I wouldn't say I was happy with. No, I would definitely not say I was happy with how, like, the end results of all of those people being gotten rid of. Yes, I'm happy that they were gone. That they're gone. I think it took longer than it should have, and a lot of them were people that like there were some of them that I had reported some of their actions myself in the past,
shit,
and it was like, well, they're still here. Cool. Like, anyway, here's a case again of this thing occurring, and it would be like, oh, we'll talk to them, and then it just took way too long. Part of that was just like prior leadership. Even before J. Allen Brack.
Like a boys club?
Like, yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
like there were certain people that were just, they were kept around because they were one of the gang. And so, like, of course they're still here. Oh, we'll talk to him about it. And it's like, that's not, there's a point where you don't just talk to somebody about something anymore. Like, when it gets
Well,
into
it's not
like,
working.
yeah, exactly. Even if it's like the first time it's happened, like if you just straight up sexually harassing somebody else at work, like that's not a we'll have a talk with them about it situation.
Gotcha.
Like depending on the severity, but at any rate, like I would say it took too long for action to take place, which is part of why everyone was so pissed off. And the general leadership response, especially in the early days, where they were like putting out articles, they're putting out letters to the company that were like, this is all lies and false and
Yeah, because
like,
I got
none
leaked
of this-
publicly very quickly.
Yeah, because of course I did. This has been like the initial article that came out. It was like, this is a misrepresentative and overblown accounting of the facts, and then immediately like all of the internal company channels were like, actually no, this is not even half of what happened. And so like that initial reaction was awful. I have heard that since I've left, I have heard that the company from an upper level has been taking on a lot more and doing a lot more things to improve like general working conditions and make things better for the employees, which is great to hear.
That's what we got while we were there.
Yeah, and I should say also like when a whole bunch of us went down to picket at the front door and we did the walkout at the front gate of Blizzard campus. Even though we couldn't go in because we were still on lockdown from COVID. But there was a bunch of us out there just picketing. Like, John Haidt came out and he was walking around and talking to people and just being like, yeah, no, I respect your right to be here and we need to do better. And I was like, okay, that's a really good thing to see. Like, that made me feel better about at least what the Blizzard section of the company was going to be able to do. but it was a rough time. Man. It was a
Yeah,
rough
because those are
time.
your friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's always the issue, because I went through nothing as large scale as that, but the same with Method and the incidents there with Method Josh and Final Boss TV. And those are people who've been in my house, play with my kids and stuff. And then when you find out, like, I didn't see anything, and then you find out what's going on, and you're just like, it hurts. It hurts a lot. It really fucking does. And you're like, what can you do to do anything or to make it better? And there ain't much other than, make your voice heard,
Yeah, I'm kind of fortunate in that, like, I'm really bad at making work friends. Like, I just, like, I'm working,
really?
I'm working, and so, like, I'm working, and then when I'm done working, I'm like, okay, I'm done working now, everyone, see you tomorrow. These people no longer exist. Like, I'm just, I guess, not sociable in that way. So, like, none of the people that were part of any of this were people that I would ever consider myself, like, super close with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were people that I had worked with that I was like, oh my God, that guy, I didn't know or whatever. But for me at least, it wasn't like, wow, yeah, and I was at his birthday party last month and we were all hanging out and blah blah blah. Like, there wasn't any. I was lucky in that it wasn't.
Yeah, you weren't
anyone
taking your work home with you. Like,
Yeah,
They
exactly.
weren't the same circles of friends.
Yeah.
But where do you see moving on from that? Because you did move on eventually,
Mhm.
but more for just it was a better job.
Yeah.
That was,
exactly.
That wasn't like a stance of leaving because
Yeah.
of that.
No. I like had zero hard feelings whatsoever. Like, Blizzard tried to keep me, but the offer that TikTok made was just very good. So I was like, okay, I have my own team now at TikTok, and it was a substantial pay increase as well. And it's like, at some point I have to step back and say, like, this is my career.
Yeah.
I can't turn down a big advancement in my career, even though I love this game and I love the people that are here. Like, that, it's that separation of work, right? Like, I still have to be able to do that. So there were no hard feelings whatsoever there. And I still keep in contact with several members of the team, and I even helped them a bunch after I'd already left, because I was like, okay, yeah, here are things that you need to know. Like, they would ping me and be like, okay, what's up with this content creator? I'd be like, okay, here's a couple things that I remember about them, or I haven't worked with this content creator before, but just trying to, get information on, basically. So what happened? Okay, here's another story for you. So when I came into the influencer lead role for the Warcraft franchise, was immediately after the big round of layoffs in 2018.
Yes, I remember that.
They fired 800 people, and they all found out that day. And then all of a sudden there was no one in charge of influencers anymore. They were like, well, we need someone to be in charge of influencers. I'm like, I guess that's me, because that's my life.
You're the obvious pick.
Yeah. And it was just like, this is my life. This is what, I'd been wanting to do more stuff with content creators already anyway. So I was like, yeah, I'll take this on. But because it came out of layoffs, there was no handoff of information whatsoever.
That makes sense.
It was just like,
they're not coming back to do a
yeah, exactly.
Passover,
And I wouldn't ask them to. Like, if you just got laid off from your job, I'm not gonna be like, hey, so by the way, could you do a whole bunch of work for free now? Like, that's lame.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of well, I guess I'm rebuilding our entire influencer program from scratch. And then I didn't want to do that to whoever my successor was going to be. So I was like, okay. I actually spent a month working with Linksy, who's one of the CMs, just to be like, okay, I'm going to attempt to brain dump everything that I can about our influencer system and how all this works onto you, so that she didn't take over for me, but that way that knowledge existed with someone on the team, so that could then be passed on to whoever did end up replacing me. Because I didn't have time to actually hire my own replacement, sadly.
Is that how you would usually do that? You would interview someone to replace you?
If it was the case where I had 3 or 4 months, because Blizzard's hiring process takes ages. If it was the case where I had 3 or 4 months, then that would have been my preference, and I would have been working with my manager and said, hey, I'm planning to leave in 4 months. Let's work towards finding a replacement for me so that I can train them so they can take over. That would be my preference, because I don't want to have been working on something for years and years and years, and then just drop it and be like, well, I'm done.
Somebody else do it.
Yeah.
Start again.
I don't want to see all of that, because then I feel like that work has gone to waste if it's just lost and gone at that point. But that wasn't the case in this situation. most of my team now at TikTok had already been hired, and they were like, we need the leader for this team. So they were like, we made you this offer, but we need you here in a month. So I was like, okay, I have a month. I will do what I can in that span of time.
Awesome. Are you happy now?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, TikTok, like any company, has its hurdles, and it's very funny. Blizzard takes forever to do anything. TikTok does all the things constantly. So it's like this weird whiplash of like going from like, okay, if we're going to have a BlizzCon in 3 years, we should start thinking about that, to, okay, we've decided that we're going to launch 6 new products next month. So you better figure out how you're going to handle that. And
just
like, oh god,
deal with it, get it done.
But yeah, no, it's great. My team is amazing. Even though like it's not like a team that I handpicked myself. The person who did pick them did an amazing job putting it together. So I would have picked the same people if I had the option to. They're really great. Everyone that I work with is great, and it's been nice. It's a lot more chill than being shouted at on Twitter constantly because like a daily quest was boring or whatever.
I'm having to feed that back.
Yeah.
So you did.
I've had significantly fewer death threats over the past 6 months.
I wish I had. I got significantly more this week. I had a sunrise.
There's a quota. They just have to go somewhere, so sorry about that.
Oh, that's the way it goes. Well, I think we're good there. What do you think? Before it gets too late? You happy with that? Is there anything else you want to throw in or anything like that?
No, I'm just happy to hang out and chat.
Awesome. That was really nice. That was a good share. Because we walked away with it being so one-sided because we were at Blizzard. Like, just getting the context of what that was is so important, I think.